Okay, welcome folks. We are just about to get started here, or actually we're just letting folks into this session. My name's Ed Shikata, Palo Alto City Manager. Welcome to our Palo Alto Fiber community meeting. Again, folks are just arriving, so bear with us for a minute and we'll get started. Hopefully you can see we've got a presentation slide already up. So hopefully your screen configurations are such you can see that. And we still have folks coming in, although, let's see, it looks fairly stable. Once again, let me just do a quick introduction. My name's Ed Shikata. I'm the city manager here in Palo Alto. And hopefully you found the right Zoom session. This is our Palo Alto Fiber community meeting. And actually, I see something a little odd about that slide. I don't know if it's just my screen or not, but okay, it's better there. All right, well, and just for your awareness as a participant here tonight, looks like we've got 56 attendees. We're expecting a few more, so we'll see if folks join us as we proceed. But nonetheless, in the interest of everyone's time, I want to go ahead and get started. Although it started kicking up again, I'm close to 60 now, or at 60. So, all right, we'll go ahead and get started. Again, my name's Ed Shikata, Palo Alto City Manager. Thank you very much for joining us here for our Palo Alto Fiber community meeting. We've got quite a bit of information to share with you and look forward to our discussion this evening. So why don't we go ahead with the next slide. And again, just welcoming everyone. Also, just want to provide some background since some folks may be new to the conversation of providing fiber optics throughout the city of Palo Alto. This is an extremely important initiative. And for those who aren't new to the conversation, you've been hearing this talked about for many years here in Palo Alto. Perhaps our utilities director, Dean, can cite exactly when the conversation started, but we'll get to that in a minute. But if among the COVID silver linings, as we like to refer to it, certainly a recognition of the value and potential for fiber to the home, fiber to the premises throughout our community has certainly come to light and been an issue of great interest throughout our community. So as a result of that, the city has undertaken significant effort to really do the homework and legwork necessary to be able to bring a decision forward in the very near future for going forward with the fiber to the premises initiative. So with that, look forward to our presentation tonight, as well as the discussion, and also give you an indication of what's ahead. Next slide, please. All right, so for tonight, we will be providing a bit of history on the development of a fiber initiative. We'll provide a summary of what exactly that means. And again, recognize that people are at a variety of entry points to the conversation. Do want to make sure that we can provide some baseline information that everyone who's involved in this discussion has as a base of knowledge. We'll go through our schedule and some upcoming milestones, as well as ways in which community members can be engaged and stay informed of this discussion as it proceeds, and then we'll open it up for discussion. Just to be clear, in case you weren't aware, this session is being recorded, and that way it'll be available for folks who were not able to join us here live. So with that, next slide, please.
Good evening. I'm Dean Batchelor. I'm the Director of Utilities. Welcome everybody tonight. So a little bit about the history. The history has been ongoing since the early 2000s, where various business plans, construction costs, estimations for operational models included private and partnerships. And the city was unable to move forward and implement in the early 2000s However, the idea behind deploying gigabyte speeds has always been something that serving both to the commercial as well to residentials has been on the forefront. In 2013, staff provided a master plan looking at some wireless network plans to council. Unfortunately, we put an RFP out at that period of time, and we did not get any takers to look at that plan. 2 years later, in 2015, we went through, re-looked at the master plan, looked at the wireless network, in addition to thinking that maybe wireless might be a way to look at fiber to the home. But the capabilities at that period of time and technology was not as strong as we thought. And so it was something that we needed to go back and look at again. But in 2019, we did another RFP that would outline areas looking at a high-level design, as well as another business plan. And this business plan was going to look at detailing an engineering design, a full engineering design and cost estimate to fiber to the premise. And so at that point, city hired Magellan, who's a fiber expert and has built many fiber plants throughout the United States. And we are partnering with them as we are moving forward with this. So we decided that creation to the utility and similarities with this and the fiber efforts. You know, one of the things is that we're locally owned, and locally owned is where large corporations are accountable to their stakeholders and shareholders. Where today, Palo Alto Fiber Network is accountable for the community, creating more responsive and local control. And local control is very important. As we talk about a high level quality of customer service, as everybody knows, the utilities have been in business for over 100 years. And we understand the community. We understand what the needs are. We also understand that providing high quality service is very important in a timely manner. And it's reliable. Reliability is number one on that. You know, fiber is really the gold standard to fast, reliable internet services. I think that you look at DSL or cable, it's capable of carrying amounts of data. However, when you have fiber, you're able to do it much faster, and that's how you can get your gigabit speeds. And that's what we're looking at as we move forward today. The community investment aspect of it is that it's public invested in broadband, and it creates the competition between services and keeps the costs low. And that's going to be very important, as you'll see through this presentation tonight. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to John Honker, who is from Magellan, to walk us through the rest of the presentation. John?
Great. Thank you, Director Batchelor and City Manager Shikata. Good evening, everyone. My name is John Honker. I'm really the project executive with Magellan on the city's project, and it's been great to partner with the city over the past year and a half that we've been working on this with Dr. Batchelor and his team to make this a reality. And I think, you know, echoing what Director Batchelor said is really important. Local ownership of utilities improves affordability. If we look at just CPAU, you know, electric rates were 37% lower than bills from PG&E in 2020. The same holds true when we start looking at broadband owned by public utilities, where there's more pricing controls over the network, there's more local ownership, there's more local control, and that creates a scenario where the utilities can deliver more value potentially at equal or better prices than can be found in the competitive market. So what we're going to talk a little bit about tonight is, you know, why Palo Alto is doing this. We're going to look at some examples of some other communities, look at what's been done to date, and Palo Alto's come a long way now in this project to get closer to actually implementing a network. And then we're going to talk a little bit with Megan about questions and answers from the citizens of the city. Next slide, please. Great. So as we look at community, we call it community broadband or community-owned broadband. Palo Alto is looking at joining another 100 communities over across 20 states that operate and control their own broadband destiny. And the message is clear, I think, for community broadband providers like Palo Alto is considering being, is faster speeds, lower prices, local control, and community reinvestment. But in addition to that, one thing that the communities all who provide broadband all excel at is taking care of the customer. We find, such a significant difference between the customer service levels from the local power companies that provide broadband than, the typical ISPs that are out there. And they hang their hats on that because, the reputation in the community of the utility providing great service, providing essential services and locally owned services is really critical. And, we look at other communities across the US, most of them are power utilities that do this. They own their own electric. They've been in the business of providing essential services for many, many years. And they're poised to bring broadband to their communities. Next slide, please. So what other communities are doing in the US today? 3 of the relatively notable communities out there today are city of Chattanooga, Tennessee, which, they own their own fiber to the home. They provide it to the entire city. A new study came out that shows that over $2.6 billion in benefits have been generated locally from the EPB fiber optic network over the past 10 to 15 years. They reinvest significant amount of cash back into their network and into community programs. They're known for providing some of the fastest speeds in the US, along with the city of Longmont, Colorado, and NextLight, who's a power utility very similar to Palo Alto, a little larger, but is providing gigabit and greater speeds, local customer service, local control, and is allowing customers to participate in the affordable connectivity program for low-income residents, which gives them discounted prices on their internet and subsidies for their internet, as well as Cedar Falls Utilities in Iowa, right, who was just recently ranked the best gaming provider in the US. CFU has over 80% of the market in Cedar Falls, meaning 8 out of 10 households subscribe to them. They've really done an excellent job at providing, gigabit broadband services, high-speed internet to nearly the entire community, along with their businesses and their large anchor institutions. So they're bringing low-cost, high-speed internet to schools, to hospitals, to other community institutions. Next slide, please. So if we look nationally, 3 of the 10 fastest ISPs in the US are community owned. We talked about NextLight, Longmont in Colorado, Chattanooga EPB, and CFU. So if we look at this, we have some others on here. We have a lot of private companies, but 3 out of the top 10 are community owned. And what we see in those community owned networks is generally, symmetrical speeds, meaning fast uploads, not just fast downloads, no data caps, and no throttling, right? So, no matter how many people you have in your house watching Netflix and Hulu at the same time, and no matter how many game consoles you have going and Xbox is going, there's no slowdowns and there's no issues. That's a big differentiator from what you see out there typically today. Next slide, please. So let's talk about what are the benefits to Palo Alto as we look at this. We've worked with a lot of communities, and the message has been the same, right? Really building service excellence over 100% fiber network all the way to the home or business, meaning that fiber is actually going into your house, connecting you to the internet across the Palo Alto network. Local ownership is really important, right? Local ownership means that local decision making can be easily made by citizens and businesses of Palo Alto rather than outside shareholders. So, it's all about skin in the game. It's all about having local control, making services available to the community and the community managing those services. Quality of life, right? We've seen this over the last year and a half, 2 years that the pandemic's been going on. Working from home, distance learning, telehealth, and telemedicine. Those are here to stay, and they're growing. The more bandwidth we have to be able to support those in the community, the better the quality of life is going to be. So you've got to be really reliant on your broadband as we continue to need more and more bandwidth. Community investment, bringing new dollars into the community and keeping those dollars local, right? Rather than exporting them to shareholders of a corporation that doesn't exist in Palo Alto. Then competition, right? Giving the community choice while keeping prices affordable. And finally, economic development. How do we lower the cost of doing business in Palo Alto by bringing more affordable fiber to small businesses, medium businesses, and even your big enterprises? Next slide, please. So why will Palo Alto's fiber be different and better, right? These are really the differentiators as we've worked with the city to really develop the mission statement and the products and the services that will make Palo Alto's fiber internet service superior to what's out there today. Is one, it's going to reach every Palo Alto resident. The goal is 100% coverage of the city, no matter where you live. And that also means not only cover everywhere where you live, but at the same speeds. So today, depending on what side of the street you live on or how far you are from, a central office, your speeds may vary, right? We don't like that. We don't like the speeds may vary, but your pricing doesn't vary. You pay the same amount, but your speeds may vary. The goal with Palo Alto Fiber is fiber that reaches every resident and at the same speed. Number two is really building the network for the future, gig speeds as a baseline, right? Gigabit internet is the gold standard today, but also making it available up to 10 gigabit, which is the next generation of broadband, which only a few communities in the country have available right now. And that sets Palo Alto apart in being one of the fastest broadband communities in the country. Symmetrical, so the same upload and download speed. So when you're on Zoom, when you're gaming, whatever you're doing, you're video chatting, you've got the opportunity to push more uploads, right? More faster uploads, so you don't get starved and your video connections don't drop out. Privacy and no sharing of data, right? That's a commitment to ensuring the network and the system maintains residents' privacy. No data caps, and straightforward pricing with no hidden fees, right? Those are the goals. No promotional discounts, no 12-month contracts when your rates then go up 20%, 30%. So the goal would be to develop straightforward pricing, simple pricing that everyone can understand with no hidden fees. So this shows a timeline of where we're at today, and excuse me, this shows us really a timeline of where we're at today and where we're headed, right? What work has been completed. And to date, broadband design and initial planning was started in August of 2020, followed by the planning and design, which was complete in April of 21 of last year. Then the detailed engineering of the fiber to the home network started in May of last year, as well as the business model analysis, right? And the business model analysis really showed what are the best opportunities for Palo Alto to serve the community effectively at a low cost, keeping in mind, the organization and how it can, manage the business in an effective way. In May of this year, we'll be finishing the design engineering for the network, meaning the blueprint for the network is effectively complete and is ready to potentially build. and the final business modeling, the financials and pro formas will be completed in May, followed by really presentations of that information to the UAC and City Council right around that Q3 of 2022 mark. So this is a significant step for Palo Alto. Moving through the design engineering stage is really the first major step in implementing broadband, because it gives you the opportunity to know exactly, like as if you're building a house. The first step is to have an architect create the blueprints from the house. Can't build it without the blueprints. So this engineering design is really the blueprint for the fiber to the home network that will be ready to build again and presented to City Council and the UAC in Q3 of this year. Next slide, please. So what are the next steps? So we're at the first step here. We're at community awareness engagement, which is really engaging the community, focus groups, helping educate and build awareness of the broadband program that's Palo Alto is putting together. E-News signups and the Palo Alto Fiber Hub are all ways to engage, which Megan can go through in just a few moments. The next step in Q2 of this year, the UAC and City Council presentations and project updates. And then Q4, we're looking at City Council direction to potentially move toward a vote to move forward with funding and construction of the network. So, over the next effectively 10 months, you'll be hearing a lot about the project, a lot of presentations, and then some final direction by City Council toward the end of the year. Next slide. So before we turn it over to Megan, talk through a little bit of Q&A, we have been fielding questions from residents and businesses to some of the common questions. So what we thought we would do is just pin up some of those most common questions so we don't go through sort of duplicative Q&A with the residents. So we're just going to talk about a few of those here first, and then I'll turn it over to Megan, who will go through some Q&A, some live Q&A with the folks on the call. So how do I sign up for updates? Number one, I'm going to let actually Megan carry that on the next slide, because it gives all of the engagement and information sources that where you can sign up and get information. When can I expect to get and sign up for Palo Alto Fiber Internet Service? So again, as we're looking this year, we would expect council direction sort of in the Q4. So based on that council direction, then into next year would be potentially the first year of fiber construction and some potential signups if the city decides to move forward. How much would the monthly cost be to residents and businesses? So this is a really important question, and it's one of the most, when we get into these projects, it's one of the most common questions. People want to know what they're paying and when they're going to get it. So one of the key things about this, the costs are, we're going to find out what residents are paying today through a resident and a business survey that's going to be coming out in the coming months. We were asking residents to tell us how much they're paying today so that the city can really shape the costs for internet service to be competitive with the market or potentially lower than the market. The goal is really, to survey the folks who have internet today, understand what they're paying, what they're getting, and then really craft packages to meet a good competitive prices and to be as low as possible. This next question is something we've gotten a few of, but it's important to address. So what's the purpose of the project if AT&T and Comcast already provide fiber to Palo Alto? So when we look at, AT&T and Comcast, they do have some fiber in Palo Alto. They have some neighborhoods, but they are far away from providing fiber in all neighborhoods, meaning that there's only some people who are able to receive service. So again, the goal of this project is really to make sure all residents and businesses in Palo Alto have the opportunity to connect to fiber, at a reasonable amount of time, because we don't know when those existing networks will ever be built, if they will be built. So Palo Alto's goal is really to push that goal forward, to make sure it's available to all residents and businesses. The other thing that's important about that is, even if there were an area where AT&T or Comcast operates with fiber, competition is a good thing, right, for the residents of Palo Alto. Competition reduces prices and makes providers more competitive. So this just creates more choice for Palo Alto's residents and businesses if there's an additional provider there with fiber. The next question is also very important. Where would it be deployed first? And it may be a little early to talk through that, but we would be working with the city to help understand what the most efficient way to build the network is and least impactful to the community, right? So there's a lot of construction involved in building a fiber to the home network. And we want to be very cautious of protecting the community and building the network in a way that's efficient, minimizes issues, and get service as quickly as possible. The final question was who would be able to have Palo Alto fiber, and I think I sort of answered that in the beginning. Is the goal would be connectivity across the entire community. So if you live in the city of Palo Alto, you would be able to have access to Palo Alto fiber. And with that, I'd like to turn it back over to Megan to talk a little bit about the engagement piece.
Great. Thank you so much, John. Hi, everyone. Good evening. Megan Horgan-Taylor, Chief Communications Officer for the city. Wanted to highlight just a couple of ways to stay informed and be engaged through this overall effort. And a few folks already put some questions in the chat around this as well. So wanted to make sure to share a little bit of these ways to stay up to date. We do have a newsletter that's specific to Palo Alto Fiber to provide updates as the project progresses. So that will be something that folks can sign up for, which if you go to either the cityofpaloalto.org/Palo Alto Fiber or fiber.cityofpaloalto.org, there's a sign up button there to receive updates. We are also planning to schedule some smaller focus group opportunities within March and April. And so both of our websites will have information about these events as they're scheduled. In addition, we do have an email. So if there are questions that we have not answered tonight, other detailed questions that you might have, you can also email us at fiber@cityofpaloalto.org, and we will get back to you with answers to those questions. So just a few ways for you to sign up and get information. In terms of being engaged, I did want to mention that we have a fiber hub, which provides some fun and unique ways to share your support by pinning your neighbor, your household and or your business to demonstrate that you are interested in fiber. That does help us understand the overall community interest in this project as we move forward. So just a note there to pin your house and encourage your neighbors to do so, and or also pin your business and encourage your business colleagues to also show your support that way. There are a couple of folks in the chat that are interested in being part of a beta test. And thank you for that. We're excited that you're excited. I did want to mention that we're also creating a feedback community. So for those who are very interested in this project, if you'd like to be kind of on the front end as we're rolling out surveys, as we're rolling out information to help us with that effort, feel free to email us your interest, and you could definitely be a part of that as well. Next slide, please. Thank you. So I did want to mention for our question and answer session this evening, there's multiple ways to share input or ask a question. We will be taking some questions live. So if you do want to raise your hand and you're interested in a live question, we can definitely accommodate that. There are several questions as well in our Q&A feature of Zoom. And so I'll be helping to facilitate some of those questions and answers tonight as well as part of our process. And then, of course, like I mentioned, if there is a question that's not answered because we run out of time tonight, or because you'd prefer to ask it outside of this venue, we do have an email address, fiber@cityofpaloalto.org. And we could set up time with you directly to answer questions that you might have. As part of the follow-up to our meeting tonight, we are going to expand our frequently asked questions that are available online. So we appreciate everyone's input tonight and your engagement around this. It helps us to be able to provide additional information to the public as the project progresses. We also have a blog series through our medium.com platform called Palo Alto Connect, and we will be answering, offering a forum there to answer questions that we've heard and provide some overall themes with answers there as well. So we'll share that with through our website once those are posted after tomorrow. So I did want to mention that. And the rest of the things I think I already mentioned. The only other thing I did want to mention that John highlighted a little bit was the Utilities Advisory Commission does receive updates on this project on a regular basis, and they will be receiving additional updates. And so those are open to the public. So if you're interested in staying kind of lockstep on the project, you can definitely sign up to participate in those conversations. And of course, the UAC and City Council are planning other conversations as we go, and all of that information will be available on our website. So just wanted to mention those few opportunities. So I think with that, Ed, or would you like to say a couple closing comments, and then we'll open it up for our Q&A session?
Really not closing comments, since we're really just at the beginning of these discussions.
Okay.
I did just want to note for folks who were tracking, can't remember what number I cited at the start of the session, but we are currently at 80 attendees in addition to the presenters here. So it's a very well-attended session and clearly represents the level of interest and excitement in the community on this project. So with that, back to you, Megan.
Thank you. So I think we can unshare our screen at this point. And then I think what we'll do to start is answer some questions in the Zoom chat. And then if there are people who are interested in asking a question live, please raise your hand. And as we get to some of the questions in the chat, we'll then go back and forth between the Q&A that we have received so far online and then take some live questions after that. So with that, I'll help facilitate some of the questions and then ask the other panelists to assist with answers as we go through. There are a lot of questions through the chat around potential cost of a local service in terms of what a customer might pay. I know, John, you had talked about that a little bit. Is there a way that you could go into that a little bit further for folks on the meeting tonight?
I think we can, Megan. I see a couple of questions in here around, current pricing and what other providers may charge. And, as we get into this further and we understand what those rates look like, the goal is to be competitive, or really potentially more competitive in, pricing bands that really represent, the most value to the network. So we look at a couple of pricing bands for service. And I think what's really important for the Palo Alto community is to know that pricing is always subject to change based on what factors are happening in the market, right? And exact pricing, rather than saying exact pricing, which, if the service is rolled out next year, then, that at that time pricing may be slightly different. But, some general pricing bands that we see in most community networks for, say, gigabit service, which is really the gold standard in broadband services right now, are sort of in the, set up sort of the $70 to $80 range, maybe 85 typically, which is what you'll see in a lot of the other networks. For example, in like Longmont, Colorado, you'll maybe see 70. In a higher cost market, you may see 75 or 80. So, exact pricing again will come down to a lot of factors, but for like a gigabit service, those are typical prices that you would see. And the goal would be to kind of stay within those pricing bands. But for lower speed service, say, you're potentially 300 to 500 megabit speeds, which is what a lot of people get out there. You might be in the $50 to $70 range for service, depending on what features and what options are included in that. And then also potentially a lower speed, for people who don't need all that speed and all that connectivity, potentially a value package that is, sort of in the $30 to $50 range could be a potential. So those are really sort of 3 tiers of pricing that we typically see. Again, all subject to change, but those are typically in those community networks like Palo Alto is planning. That's what we would expect.
Thank you. There are several comments about different services that might be able to be offered through Palo Alto Fiber, from voice over to phone service to TV service. Is that, I'm kind of summarizing some of those because there are many. I'm wondering, John or Dean, would you be able to assist with answering that?
As we look at services, that's something that will come out in the survey data. So we really are pushing residents to take the survey to tell us what they have. And when that survey comes out, it'll land in everyone's email boxes. So it'll be an email survey delivery, and it'll ask you what you currently have for internet, and also what other services you get along with internet. Do you get phone, home phone, VoIP? Do you get TV? Do you get home security? And the goal there is really to understand what Palo Alto's residents need and businesses need. So I think as we would say it, multiple options are on the table right now. Internet access is fundamental, right? That all of the other services kind of ride on top of that. So I would say nothing's off the table right now, but we want to learn more from residents to figure out exactly what the city needs, what should be provided.
Thank you. There's questions about the fiber build out and how that might be deployed underground, overhead. Is there an opportunity to talk a little bit about how that might be phased out? Sure,
happy to. So as you know, the Palo Alto has a lot of utility poles out there today, and fiber can use those utility poles. So a portion of the network will utilize the poles, and a portion of it will be underground, depending where those different resources exist. In terms of the scheduling of deployment, that'll still be a question, really, I think, that comes a little later this year, and where it will go first and what would be the overall schedule for rollout of services to the community.
There's a few interesting comments about and questions. There's one here about fiber is already immediately adjacent to Palo Alto and Gunn High Schools, and wondering about leasing some of that fiber from the existing provider, T-Mobile, to connect the schools as a first step. And if we've considered something like that.
So we're looking at all options, right? If there's a specific need, especially if there's a opportunity to bring more broadband to schools or libraries, or wherever there's an opportunity to do that's a big win for Palo Alto, right? I mean, Palo Alto already has a strong fiber backbone that has been around the city for the past 20 years. That's doing really, I mean, when we look at it and we see a lot of communities, Palo Alto is one of the leaders in the dark fiber, in just fiber itself, among other communities. And if there's an opportunity to to go after some low-hanging fruit, like some more schools or some other community organizations as part of this, it'll be in the plan.
There's a couple questions about how the plan to roll out might be phased with prioritizing different neighborhoods. And there's also a lot of interest from members of the community to sort of be a part of that beta. Is there an opportunity for that potentially to occur as part of the analysis? And how will that work?
I think we're going to get great data from the survey and from the Palo Alto Fiber Hub, because both of those tell the city where on the map people are really interested. So the more that you use those systems, responding to the survey puts you on the map as far as an interested household for fiber, and being on Palo Alto Fiber Hub also puts you on the map. So, register your interest on those two engagement platforms, and it will impact, I think it will, keep me wrong, Dean and Ed, but it'll create some opportunity for decision-making around where fiber goes first.
Thank you. There's a few questions about how the overall build out might be funded. Is that something that we can go into today?
Dean or Ed, would you guys like to chime in on that one?
Dean, you want to take that? Just
So
in terms of where the discussion
I'm sorry, I
is?
missed the question. I apologize. What was the question?
The question is the potential of how to fund such a large rollout of the fiber network.
I think the thing is that we've looked at some different funding mechanisms. We've looked at ways of building some sections and then see what the take rates are going to be, and then collecting some funding from that to move on to the next sections. We've also looked at creating a bond that we might do some bond financing of the entire rollout. This rollout will take of the building of 100% of the system, as John mentioned, that the plan would be is to roll this out. Probably the fastest that we could do something is probably 5-6 years to get from the very beginning to the very end to build this, due to, as John mentioned, that utilizing the poles as well as using the underground sections that we would have to build. It will be a little bit of a construction time, but we're looking at ways of how we can fund this, but those are some of the two options that we've looked at so far.
And there's also, as a follow-up to that, there's a question around, is there already existing funding available? And if so, how much is that?
There is existing funding right now from fiber. It's about $35 million has been collected to date, which has been from the dark fiber network that could be utilized at this point.
Thank you. And there's a few questions about business models. And I know that's part of the analysis that's underway. Could Dean or John or Ed help the community understand where we are in that process?
Sure. Dean, I can start off on that. So really the business model, we're kind of in the business model planning process right now. What's the best way to deliver services to homes and businesses the most efficient way, and the way that the city can maintain the best quality service to the community. And that process really is looking at things like, operations and customer service. And, in the same way that CPAU manages the electric plant and all the miles of electric, lines throughout the city, well, CPAU or the city will have to manage all that fiber in the same way. It's a very similar business to electric, but there's some key differences. So really building a good organizational structure, operating structure around the business to make sure that the city can deliver top quality services and become really a gigabit community like so many others have is going to be fundamental to the project. And then also making sure, Palo Alto is already connected to the Palo Alto Internet Exchange downtown. And that is a blessing for the city because it allows the city to get, as much internet from the world as it needs, right, for a very low cost. And that for broadband and for connectivity, it really puts the city on the map as far as a leading broadband community by having that internet exchange in Palo Alto where 100 carriers exist and can reach, have global reach to the rest of the world.
Thank you. There's a couple of questions around, I'm just trying to group some of the questions together because they sort of relate. So let me look at that really quickly. There's a question around, has Palo Alto asked neighboring cities to join together in an alliance since several cities together might achieve a critical mass fairly quickly?
I think at this time we have not looked at neighboring cities. We've been concentrating on doing a high level or a full detail design phase of the network it's necessary for the community in Palo Alto. We have had some small conversations with East Palo Alto about maybe some expansion at a later date. But our main focus right now is the community of Palo Alto.
Thank you. There's a couple of questions about kind of the overall plans to have point-to-point or PON service. And there's actually a few questions related to that.
Sure. So I can take that one, Megan.
Thank you.
I see those questions here. So the questions sort of around the technology that's actually going to be delivering service. So really the network that's being designed right now supports the next generation of fiber to the home, which is what we call a passive optical network with an Ethernet overlay. And that's a lot of fancy jargon for 10 gigabit capable network, 1 gigabit standard with long-term growth to 100 gigabits, right? So today gigabit is the gold standard. That's 1,000 megabits. 10 gigabit would be immediately available as an upgrade. That's 10 times the gold standard today. And then the long range plan is for 100 gigabit, which is 100 times that gold standard today. So today we don't even have applications that are available to support 100 gigabit or actually use 100 gigabit. But in the future, as we all look forward, more and more broadband usage is going to eventually lead there. So Palo Alto's network will be one of the fastest in the country, and then dimensioned really for the next 10 to 15 years.
Thank you. There's a question about the Google Fiber project and how that was actually not something that they ended up moving forward with, partly because of the overall expense, and kind of wanting to better understand how the Palo Alto Fiber project might be different from that overall effort.
Sure, I see the Google question here. So really, Google's entree into Palo Alto and their ultimate sort of departure was a private company sort of making a decision not to move forward based on overall economics. And one of the big differences, well, there are two big differences we look at when Palo Alto is actually going to be building the network and financing the network. Palo Alto the city does not need to make the same levels of return on investment that Google does, and a private sector return on investment, which changes the economics dramatically when you're trying to do fiber to the home, and is actually why a lot of cities have moved forward with fiber to the home, because the private companies in those cases haven't been able to do it. So because of those differences in economics, and because Palo Alto doesn't have a return on investment requirement anywhere near what a Google has, it's much more financially feasible for the city to do it. Second reason is Palo Alto has a lot of infrastructure out there already, which helps lower the cost of the broadband project. So, you know, you already have 50 or more miles of fiber out there, some of which can be used for fiber to the home. You also have poles, you have underground conduits. There's a lot of infrastructure that's available currently that helps lower the price of building the network. And that's really been sort of incorporated into the engineering that we're going through today. So those are a couple of differences between sort of Google and Palo Alto, and why possibly Google didn't move forward.
Thank you. There's a couple of neighborhood specific questions that I'm trying to see if I could answer or ask them together as one cohesive question. One question is around the South Palo Alto Barron Park area. Does Palo Alto own these utility poles, and would the neighborhood potentially be served through fiber through those poles or not? That's one question. There's another question about the Palo Alto Hills area and how they might be served as part of the project as well.
John, I can kind of take the Barron Park question. So the poles that are located in the Barron Park area are solely to Palo Alto. We own those poles in those areas. And so the idea would be is that we would build fiber on those poles in that neighborhood. As we've talked in the past for folks on customers that are up in the hills, yes, as John mentioned, you know, we will provide service to customers. We are in the process of working out some details with a third-party vendor on trying to get some fiber up in that area as we speak. We don't have all fiber all the way up to the top of the hill yet, but we're trying to work with a third-party vendor to be able to serve those customers off of our fiber network today.
Thank you. There's a question about, will the internet service be rolled into our electricity, gas, water, sewer, garbage bill, or will that be a separate utility entity created completely? That's kind of a two-part question there. How will it potentially be billed, and the kind of model question, which I know John had answered a little bit already.
So so the plan would be is that the utility would be a separate utility by itself. It would be a fiber utility. The question that I think that we are still looking at is, how is that bill going to be formulated? Do we separate it off of the existing utilities bill, or do we roll it all within? And I think that that's something that we'll have to determine that for a future date.
Thank you.
Just as we were talking about the other utilities, I did see a question that related to advanced metering infrastructure. So the question of, how does this project relate to advanced metering infrastructure? Dean, could you respond to that?
So this project at this period of time has nothing to do with our advanced metering structure. It was one of the ideas that we were looking at in the history that we would try to combine this with the fiber. but we have found ways to use the existing backbone that we use for our SCADA systems to integrate where the fiber was needed to build what are called collectors. We were in the process of making those connections, we're moving forward with that project at this time.
Independently. So that's
Yes.
proceeding irrespective of the fiber project. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. There is a community member with their hand raised, so I'd like to ask Scott ONeill to participate live. You'll have to unmute yourself.
Thank you. Yeah, I want to say I support this project. I have to say it's been a point of frustration for me that ever since I moved to Palo Alto 9 years ago, that I've had a physical municipal fiber tap on my multifamily complex property that would cost us, if I recall, like $800 per month to access. And all the while, you know, commercial customers have been paying to the dark fiber system and building up this big fund of like $35 million, I think you said, that is now up to which I understand is purposely there for delivering fiber to residents. And you know, I'm in this complex. We've got 75 people here across the street. I think they're in a similar boat. Another, you know, similar number of people. We own our own trenching, we own our own conduit. Like it could have been delivered here like 10 years ago, like really cheap. It's just been really frustrating that that's never happened. And this network's been here since 1996, or at least we started to build it. Like by all means, full speed ahead. This is really awesome. Like I really support you guys, and you can really tell like there's a lot of thirst for the community for getting this fiber network and getting into it. And but like as far as we are, like we've kind of got it now. We've got connected with ViaNet. You might be familiar with them. They're a local ISP. They took advantage of our conduit. They're beaming a point-to-point connection to somewhere else, and they're plugging in there, and so they're getting a little bit better than that $800 per month price point. And so they're able to get us some service, and it's awesome. I'm here to tell everyone here, like, you know, getting that symmetric gigabit, like it's great, especially in COVID. So good luck and Godspeed. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's probably a good note to end on, don't you think, Megan?
That is. Thank you for that. I don't see any other hands raised, and there are additional comments, but I know we are running out of time, so we definitely will answer these through other means, including our frequently asked questions and through our blog series. So I appreciate everyone's participation tonight.
Very
Sam,
good.
do you have any last
Nope.
words?
So with that, yeah, just want to encourage folks to sign up to receive additional information and stay in touch with the project as it proceeds. As has been noted, we've got some key decisions that the Utility Advisory Commission and ultimately the City Council will be making over the next few months. So please stay in touch, and let's hope we'll have some good news and good decisions upcoming very shortly. So with that, thank you very much.